Tranquil Wisdom Insight Meditation. This practice, as I said, it is, well, so coming from, in the modern day, a gentleman, a monk named Bonte Vimalaramsi. Bonte is a respectful term for monks. So this man, he is originally from the United States, and I believe in his 20s he began going into meditation. Subsequently, he connected actually with the exact same practice that I was intending to go to Myanmar and practice. Its name is the Mahasi Sayadaw technique of straight Vipassana or dry Vipassana. So Vipassana it's a term, it's also in the Pali language, means like insight, or that's how we translate it, other things. And it's gotten a label now largely due to Goenka, who has shared his technique that he learned from his teacher, who is also in Myanmar, of another technique of meditating with the desired end state of insight of Vipassana. But Vipassana is just a term. It doesn't actually mean like one thing. This is the meditation. So Mahasi Sayadaw teaches. Sayadaw is the Burmese title, a very high title of a monk and teacher. So he taught this certain type of meditation. As I said, there are many different types of meditation, and then there are also many different objects inside the type of meditation. So Vipassana, the intention is to gain insight into some of these things that the Buddha discovered, which are, one, there's the three characteristics of everything, of existence. The first one is Anicca. Anicca means everything is impermanent. This lovely flower, it arose, it's here for a period of time, then it will pass away. And everything else every person that I know, these birds flying, these trees, and also the earth, and also everything. So everything is impermanent. The next one is Anatta. Anatta being the law of nature, that these things are not personal. It's not personal, as I said, it's cause and effect. It's not, this person is not, even if they're yelling at me, it's not really personal. They are yelling at me because they have had all these past experiences that have brought them to the place to where when they interact with another being in a certain way, they choose to yell at them. It doesn't actually have to do with anything, it's not like there's something wrong with me, something I need to defend. This is where that person's at. And another person, like speaking of Donald Trump, some people, Donald Trump is elected and some people are very happy and some people are very sad. Like, it's due to the past causes and conditions that have brought these people to be at this place where some people are happy and some people are sad with the exact same stimulus. It's not personal. So that's Anicca, Anatta. And then the third one is Dhukka. Dhukka meaning suffering. Suffering meaning suffering exists when I ignore the first two. When I attempt to hold on to something that is impermanent, whether that is holding on to the feeling of happiness, even though I know it's at some point it's going to go away, no matter what, there's nothing wrong with it, it's just what happens. Or I try to hold on to, let's say, a partner, even though they feel to leave. Or I try to hold on to my 99-year-old grandmother, who's really wonderful and has been a real safe harbor for me throughout my life. And I do not remember her ever criticizing me, even when I'm borrowing her car at 17, speeding drunk down the roads, smoking Black and Milds and burning her seats with my friends. I don't remember her ever criticizing me. A really challenging time for me. It was very special. But I try to hold on to her. She's going to pass away. And so I experience suffering when I don't acknowledge that truth, that She's going to pass away. I don't need to be sad about it. It's 100% guaranteed. I'm not saying that it's easy. I'm not saying that I'll even be there, but these are the three, Anicca, Anatta, Dhukka. And then there's also the insight of dependent origination, as I said. So dependent origination, going a little bit further into it, it's this multi-step process that the Buddha rediscovered. As I said, we've got 6 sense bases, we've got touch here. And so the step being, there's the sense base, then there's the contact, then there's the feeling and the perception. So the feeling is this sensation, this message that goes to the mind. The perception is the mind saying, oh, I know that feeling. That's the feeling of a finger on the leg. So there's the feeling, there's the perception, and then there's the craving in some way or another, which says like, I like it or I don't like it. And then from the craving, let me use one that maybe is a little bit easier. This is a glass of tea. So there is the contact, there's the feeling, and the perception. The perception, the mind says, this is tea. It's got a little bit of some cloves in it and some other things. And so the mind says, I like it. And then from craving comes clinging. And the clinging is basically the story about why I like it. I like it because I like tea. Tea is, you know, if I were to go, this is not what I think, but if I were to go, tea is better than coffee. And tea is better than coffee because tea has L-theanine in it, and so it kind of damps out the caffeine, so I have a more stable energy from the caffeine, whereas coffee doesn't have that, so I get the up and down. So I like tea better than coffee. I'm the kind of person that is a tea drinker. I'm a tea drinker. I'm not a coffee drinker. This is the clinging. This is the identity that is created around it. So anytime I hear the mind saying, I like because, I know this is just a story. It's not real. It's just a story that's based off of past experiences that subsequently some story has been created. And instead of me now every time interacting with the tea, I just interact with the story of I like the tea because. And then from the craving, the clinging, we have the habitual tendencies. I'm a tea drinker. So therefore, I bring tea with me. I don't bring coffee with me. Therefore, when I get into a room, I see, is there a tea maker? These are all these little habit patterns. Therefore, when I wake up, I make some tea. Just little habit patterns. These are all spawned out of this story that I have created. And then from there, so all of these are theoretical. They're immaterial. And then the next step is the actual birth of action. I like tea. I'm a tea drinker because of the L-theanine. So I bring it with me, as in the idea of I bring it with me. So therefore, physically, I take it from the home, I put it in my bag. Now that action occurs. And from there, that has spawned these ripple effects out into the world. Whether that is a thought, whether that is a word, whether that is an action. That now goes out into the world, and then that subsequently, that action reinforces whatever those past ones were. So that reinforces, well, now I only have tea with me. So maybe actually I'm at a place where, coffee would be appropriate, or actually water would be appropriate. But I have brought the tea with me and I kind of feel bad if I don't use the tea. So let me use the tea. And so I do this thing. And so it's a closed loop system. And generally, these patterns that we're doing are in some way based off of craving and aversion. And when it's based off of craving and aversion, it's not based in wisdom, it's based in ignorance. And so it perpetuates these things that in some way harm us because they keep us reacting to things continually. So those are some of the insights. And again, I'm a total novice at this. And so I do not speak with any authority. Please, there are many more wise people than me, both on YouTube. Of course, you have to be careful, but also in person. So these are some of the insights that, in my understanding, practice of Vipassana, straight Vipassana, meaning focus only on Vipassana, focus only on insight, is. And so that is what the Mahasi Sayadaw technique is. So Bonte Vimalaramsi, he went to Myanmar and he practiced that Mahasi Sayadaw technique for 20 years. And he did in a very intense way. Well, one, the Mahasi Sayadaw technique is a very intense technique compared to the technique that I will share with TWIM. It's very intense. You're really focusing the mind on something. Focus, focus, focus. And he did that. He did many, I don't remember how many, but I believe over a dozen. I think it's like 13 or something, 3-month retreats. He did some longer ones. I don't remember if they were 6 or 9 months. And he did a 2-year retreat where for 2 years, every day, he's getting up and meditating 18, 20 hours, he said, sometimes a day, barely sleeping, just meditating on this. And he attained very high, whatever you would say. I mean, they call them successes or experiences after that retreat. And he was told that he had attained certain levels of awakening or certain levels of change, and asked to be a teacher of that technique after 20 years. But he felt that he couldn't in good conscience do that. And I'm only using words that he has used. I'll share one video where he describes it, and I've also heard other people who have known him for many years say the same thing. Because he didn't see the external personality change. And like I said, there are many, many meditations. They do all different sorts of things. They're not all for changing the personality or for releasing suffering. Like I said, there can be for manifestation, there can be for gaining these powers, there can be for just focusing the mind, there can be just for relaxing or going to sleep like yoga nidra or something. There can be all different sorts of things, but he wasn't seeing this external personality change, which he had been told is what the Buddha taught, and that this meditation practice that he was doing would bring him, but he didn't see it after this amount of time. So he chose to separate, and he didn't really, he went, well, I don't even need to go further into the story. You can look into it. He chose to separate, and he, at that time, there was another translation of the suttas of the Buddha. Suttas, like, they're what the Buddha said, and they were recorded and they've been passed down. Initially, they were passed down orally for like 500 years. And the monks, they would train where they would memorize, and there are people now that do it in Myanmar and things. They memorize 12,000 pages perfectly, 100% perfect. And they are tested in front of other monks who have done this already. And so these other monks and nuns, they have this perfectly memorized, this group of them. And so that this person has been studying these suttas and memorizing it perfectly. And for example, you can only miss like 6 incorrect words out of thousands of pages. Really incredible. And so that was passed down in this way, which really retains. An oral tradition is funny because it retains, if it's done in this manner, it retains much more than in a written tradition, because things can be changed with writing. No one's really, checking up on it. I could take the book and I can change different words, and it may mean different things to me. No one's checking with me. But the oral tradition, you're getting it from someone who, if it's maintained in a close way. But obviously it's also much easier to disappear. And the Dhamma also almost has many times in wars and famines and things. So subsequently it was written down in different ways, and it has been passed down. I meant to check, and maybe I will, how many suttas there are, because there are also suttas of some of his principal disciples. The principal disciples are incredibly amazing abilities with consciousness as well. But even people who wouldn't have been considered the principal disciples would still be looked at as, just in today's world, just like, we don't have anyone like them mostly. Very few. So I'm not sure how many suttas, but Bonte Vimalaramsi connected with a new translation of the suttas that was using some slightly different verbiage. And this is a language that's thousands of years old, that doesn't have any native speakers anymore. And it uses words and concepts that don't exist in English, just like any language does. Just like in English, there are words and concepts that don't exist in other countries. So you have to draw some inferences, or you have to speak with others who know or whatnot. And then at the same time, like, we're talking about words and concepts to describe using the mind, you know? This isn't how to dribble a basketball. It's not so difficult to describe how to dribble a basketball. And even with how easy we would think it would be, you still write down how to dribble a basketball. Have Michael Jordan write down how to dribble a basketball. Give that to 20 different people who are in 20 different places, and they're still going to do it in a different way. And that's nowhere near even scratching the surface of the complexity of the mind, which is deep. I mean, who knows what's in there, and who knows its potentials and capabilities, and very little differences can make a very big difference, which is some things that he found. So he chose to separate, went into a cave for some time, focused on just practicing what was said in the suttas, because what he had been practicing with the Mahasi Sayadaw technique is mostly focused off of one of the commentaries, which is known as the Visuddhimagga. And the Visuddhimagga came about 1,000 years after the Buddha passed, where they collated all different sorts of things, and different practices came into it according to what I have heard from other people and what is currently considered, including practices that were not actually in alignment with what the Buddha taught. So he went to just the words of the Buddha himself and started experimenting. And what he found was when he was doing that, he was getting very different results very rapidly. The results from the Mahasi Sayadaw technique, or these techniques which are an absorption type technique, they can take years and years just to begin to get the results that they are looking for. Of course, they're giving results, but the ones that they're specifically looking for can take a very long time. And he began experiencing different results, but very quickly, and he started experiencing personality change very quickly. And so he began refining that, or not refining it, but like refining his experiments with what he was reading. Then he began sharing it with others, and he started observing that their results. And so then that's how TWIM came about. He didn't create TWIM. TWIM is just a word that is used now for this practice, which he drew, and now many other monastics and others have drawn from the suttas as they currently understand it. Of course, there are many different other interpretations. So, for example, I will give you an example of how fine the mind is and how big a difference very tiny seemingly differences in words can be. And this is one reason, long before I connected with this, though I didn't have the ability to communicate it that well with others or with myself, I didn't fully understand it, but there has been a long time since I have recognized that words have meaning, and it really matters the words that I use, if for no other reason than, as I have been sharing over, that they will reinforce some sort of thinking in my mind. And so I attempt to choose words which are really just a manifestation of the thoughts, and so choose the thoughts that seem to be in alignment with my desired end state. And if that is positivity, then I attempt to speak in a positive manner. So here's an example of speaking about the infinite fineness of the mind and how big a difference results can be. There is one word, Pali word, named samadhi, or not named, but the word is samadhi. And historically that has been translated as concentration. And so concentration brings about quite a bit different, at least the way that concentration is thought of generally, than another translation for it, which is collectedness. and collectedness being the way that Bonte Vimalaramsi and others would use it for this practice. I'll give an example. So if we have the finger up in front of the face, and I would say concentrate on the finger. Now just pause and feel your experience. For me, there's a little bit of tension here. There's a little bit of tension here. There's energy like flowing at the finger. A little bit of tension here. There's some tension in the mind because the mind is focusing on that. And so there are these sounds and things, but these sounds are a little bit of distraction. And so it's trying not to be distracted. So if we say you're focusing, concentrate on the finger. Now just relax and take in everything around the finger. Have a wide gaze. So it's collected, it's around the finger. Finger is there, but it's a wide gaze. And these things are no longer distractions because it doesn't really matter if there's partly the mind over there or whatever, because it's still collected around this. So that brings about a very different result in meditation, as I will share. And that's just from a word that could be, most of us, myself included in the past, wouldn't think much difference of, hey, you said concentration, you said collectedness. Like, it wouldn't really mean much to me. But this stuff is fine detail, and brings about very different result. So, similarly, this practice, in the suttas, the Buddha talks about things known as jhanas. And these jhanas have been translated in different ways. Generally translated as something that occurs when one is in an absorption meditation or a focused or concentrated meditation. And at some point, if we focus strong enough on any object and our samadhi, we're fully concentrated on it, is so strong, then the mind does things differently. And we have all experienced this, though we may not have experienced it very often that we're aware of. But we get into some sort of flow state, is a certain type, you could say, of a jhana almost. Like if you're skiing, and initially you don't really know how to ski, and so your focus is everywhere and you're falling all over and whatnot. But at some point you get more ability, you get in the zone, and just like everything is flowing. Everything. So that would be a different level of consciousness that exists, and there are ways to train to be able to enter into those sorts of states. So jhanas, the Buddha spoke about these generally 9, but different types of jhanas. First jhana, second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana, fifth jhana, sixth jhana, seventh jhana, eighth jhana, and then the ninth jhana being special. Well, they're all special. And so this has been translated as this deep absorption. However, it can also be translated in another way, as in a level of understanding about the way that the mind works. And that is what Bonte Vimalaramsi discovered or rediscovered as he was putting to test these things from the suttas. Now, as I had mentioned earlier, the Buddha says in the suttas itself, as he's describing his journey to awakening, he talks about how he tried all of these. He actually says he tried the absorption practices, and he tried to crush mind with mind. He tried to control the mind, because if we're concentrating on something, then the attention, it's just its nature. As I said, it's the nature of the mind for thoughts to come up. It's the nature of attention to move to where there is some sort of contact, whether that's sound or touch or whatever. It's just the nature. But if I want to focus on this leaf, then I need to control that attention. And so I need to use my mind to control the other part of the mind. He states he tried to crush mind with mind, and it did not work. And ultimately he got to this place where he remembered as a child being at this peaceful, tranquil, relaxed, happy state, and his mind dropping into this different sort of understanding about what was going on. And he said, is this the way? And he inclined his mind toward it. And these are just the words that he says. And he said, yes, this is the way. And then he began going about it that way. And so that way, according to the understanding of Bonte, Vimalaramsi, and others, and the way that I'm currently practicing, is not focused. So I will share a little bit from my experience with it, but there are instructions from the teachers and things that one can use. And so it's amazing. I don't know how I'm gonna upload all of these videos, these things.